That is AC here. Thanks for joining, guys. Today, I'm going to talk about a subject which I have been thinking about for a long, long time. See, basically, I want you to benefit from my experiences. Now, when I started collecting fragrances, I went about it in a random fashion. Yeah, for example, I would buy fragrances that I liked the sound of, or I'd buy fragrances what other people were saying are great, and I'd just go and buy them, literally. When my collection reached about 30, that's when I thought that if I keep on buying like this, I'll end up with a collection which may not be fully to my taste. So, what I'm trying to do in this video is to share with you tips and tricks on how to build a great collection. And I'm sure some of this stuff you already know or you already practice, but I'm just trying to put it out there just in case it helps someone, right? And I've got a few notes which I've made, and I'm going to whiz through them pretty quick. So, the first thing that I think is going to benefit you if you want to have a decent collection, and 100% or 90% of the collection would be to your taste, is when you know the smells you really like. Apart from that, if you wanted to expand your horizon, one good tip I can give you is that you should train your nose. It'll help you with two things. First, you will know the smells you really like because you would have exposed yourself to many different scents. And the other thing is, it will also help you identify the true nature of a particular note. For example, what I mean by train your nose, buy essential oils. Yeah. Say, for example, you like sandalwood or you like neroli. Buy those essential oils and apply it on your skin and let it sit on your skin and see what you think, how it matures in your skin. It'll help you with two things. You will understand the whole signature of that particular scent. Plus, you would also know how a particular essential oil or particular note should really smell, right? This habit, I formed this habit a lot later, but what this has helped me is when I now smell a fragrance, and if it says there is a note of neroli in the fragrance or sandalwood or oud takes a lot of time to train your nose to. You know how it should actually smell, and if you don't like the way it smells in the fragrance, then you don't go for that fragrance, right? So smelling things, smelling essential oils is basically a very beneficial habit you can get into. Another thing, what is the real difference between lemon, lime, tangerine, and bergamot? You will only know these things when you have trained your nose through the use of essential oils. And if you're a real aficionado and you want to build a decent collection, this will really help you. So, another thing, you have to also think about training your nose through smelling classic fragrances. Don't go and buy full bottles. Just buy decants or samples because classic perfumery is where you learn the most. And you should do that before you want to move into niche. Yeah. Training your nose and classic perfumery used to be very rich, very complex. When you start training your nose on classic perfumery, yeah, for example, vintage version of Guerlain Mitsuoko, even current version, will actually give you an idea, how oak moss actually should smell. It's a signature, it's a reference model for oak moss. Not anymore. That's why I said vintage. Similarly, let's say you want to smell Azaro. So classic fougere, what should it smell like? Azaro pour Rome, classic fougere. So you will get an idea what fougere should actually smell like. Then you can go towards more complex scents like the niche fougeres. That's a suggestion to help you train your nose. Next one is related to the first one. Know what notes you like. Yeah. For example, personally, I quite like powdery scents. You know why? Because my mother used to wear scents which are slightly powdery. So when I smell powdery scent, it reminds me of my mom. Um, it reminds me of the comforting feeling I used to get when I used to smell powdery scents. So you also probably have an idea, right? Or let's say your father or your brother in your house only wears citrus fragrances. So you already know that you like citrus because it reminds you of someone very close to you, dear to you. Um, Similarly, create a portfolio of stuff that you like. So you may not like citrus, but you may like, let's say, woody scents. You may like gumans. You may like leather. So know what you like. That ways you can refine, you can confine your initial, you know, sampling to those type of fragrances. So that's rule number two. That ways you will not only test fragrances that you like in the category you like, you will also probably own fragrances that you genuinely like. Yeah. Um, Third one is very important, guys. I put a lot of emphasis in this. Devise your own testing method. How you test it. Well, there's some general rules, right? Never test on paper, because some fragrances, or most designer fragrances, have very attractive top notes. But how does that behave on your skin after dry down is the important factor. You don't buy a fragrance for 20 minutes of fun. You buy a fragrance for the entire life cycle of that fragrance. So devise your own testing method. How I do testing is very straightforward. I always get at least two samples and I try and wear it in two different weathers: summer, winter, summer, spring. If I have a good knowledge of the notes, I decide and I test them in two different seasons. This may not be a practical way to do things if you're going to go and buy a cheap fragrance. Let's say you're buying a fragrance which is a 30 pound mark. You don't need to do such an elaborate testing. But if you're planning to buy something expensive, this testing will give you a very important criteria: variability of fragrance. Yeah, which is very important in your purchasing decision. If you can't wear a fragrance in more than one season, you probably are not, you know, using the full value of the fragrance. Fourth, um, this helps you in prioritizing your expense. Have a list of to buy fragrances. Keep it manageable: 5, 6, 10, 15, whatever. I think 5 to 6 is a good number. That ways, in your head, you know that you've tested these fragrances and this is the order in which you will be buying them, roughly, depending on what season is next. What that does is you don't end up what you call impulse buying. Best practice, if you like, I have is swap. Uh, Sometimes you buy fragrances which you get bored of after half a bottle or quarter of a bottle. If you have a circle of friends through Facebook or whatever, you can always swap with something that some of the other guys might have. That ways you end up with a collection where you don't actually have fragrances which you don't like anymore. You just do away with it and bring something new into it. So guys, next one, next tip is probably the most important tip. When your collection starts to grow, what you have to focus is on variability. See, the thing is, you will hear a lot of good praise for fragrances, and I'm talking designers here, which you may or may not find wearable. For example, Pure Malt, right? Everybody loves this fragrance. I adore this fragrance. But I always have to think, where do I wear this? Can I wear this to work? No. Can I wear this to social occasions? Maybe. Can I dress down this fragrance? Probably not. You see what I mean? It's a beautiful scent, but it's got such a low variability that it sits there in your dresser for most of the year. Very few occasions when you can actually wear it. Similarly, oud. If you buy too many oud based fragrances, especially for our Western noses, where will you wear oud? Can you wear this to work? Probably in winter time. Can you wear this to evening special occasions? Yes. Can you wear this to a dress down jeans and t-shirt scenario? Maybe. You see what I mean? So variability becomes a very important criteria, especially when you have more than 10 fragrances. Because if you end up with 20 fragrances out of which 5 are wearable and 15 are not, so a huge chunk of your collection is just sitting there waiting for the right occasion when you can wear this. The other good one I've got is, once your collection starts to grow, what you will see is that your collection of samples will also start to grow. So you will end up having huge amounts of samples. Now, how do you store them? What I do is I grade my samples. Yeah, if I find a sample of a scent to be amazing, right, I grade it by saying, I use a label system. For me, anything that is worth buying is green, right? So I have a little tag and I put it on that sample bag, and all the likable samples are in that, and I put a little green tag by saying these are the samples that eventually will go into my to buy list, which I touched upon a little earlier. It just helps you, classify in your head which samples are worth really buying a bottle for, and if it's true, then when will you be buying that? Your to buy list. Don't have a too big to buy list. So that's why grading your samples is important. Some samples you will find to be likable but not lovable, right? Like but not love. You can use a different color for that. Some samples, you probably had a lot of praise about a fragrance, you ordered a sample, you didn't like it, that goes into the red bag. And that's the sample you can use to swap with others by saying, I didn't really like it. If you like it, I can send it to you. You can send something to me in return. The swap best practice that I talked about. You can apply that to samples as well. And the final one. This is the most important one, which I am myself trying to learn. Know when to sell. I have a huge collection now, and I think 20% of that collection, or maybe even 30%, I could really do away with them. I could really sell them because I'm not going to wear them. I've reviewed them, probably I haven't reviewed them, but I don't like them. Yeah, they're just meh to me. But they're still sitting on my dresser, right? And I have to do it myself, but I've included it in this list. Know when to sell and do sell it. Because you may not like something, right? But there must be someone who likes the fragrance. So let them enjoy it and you get your cash out, right? Knowing when to sell is a very important best practice, which I myself have struggled with. But I'm going to do that. I've made up my mind, but I think I'll implement that very soon. So those are the best practices. I hope this will help you in your quest to create a beautiful collection, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.